My name is Luke Aldridge. I am interviewing Vietnam veteran Richard Chelchowski, who served in the Air Force. He was in Vietnam from March 1969 to March 1970. Mr. Chelchowski, this interview will have 4 sections: your life before service, basic training, your time in Vietnam, and your life after service. So let's get started with your background. Where did you grow up, and what was your area known for?
Well, my father was from New York. My mother was from northwestern Iowa. And my father was a World War II veteran, had a military career. So I was really scattered all across the world. Really didn't have a hometown, I guess, until I arrived in Aiken, South Carolina.
Can you tell me more about your family growing up?
Well, my dad was pretty much a historian in his own right. He loved European history and World War I, World War II history. And he spoke several languages. And in 1956, my mother, my sister, and I traveled across the North Atlantic to meet my father in France, where he was stationed at Toul-Rosières Air Base. And it's probably the best education I had. Like I say, he spoke several languages and loved history. And I was able to travel all over Europe extensively. And in 1959, was even able to go behind the Iron Curtain. Dad applied to the State Department and got approval to go visit relatives in Poland. And the travel through Czechoslovakia and into Poland. And we touched on Russian territory for a while. And it was a great experience for a 12-year-old boy to see what Eastern Europe was like and what communism was like and how the people lived.
So your father was career Air Force?
He was career Air Force, and he actually had discharges from the Army in World War II, from the Navy, and from the Air Force. He just loved the military. So, I think at one time he wanted to join the French Foreign Legion, but my mother put stops to that.
Did you have any siblings?
I have had one sibling, my sister Kathy. She was 2 years younger than I am.
You mentioned that your father was in World War II. Do you have any memories of your father or other men around you telling war stories from World War II?
No, not really. Dad really didn't talk about World War II much. He was a B-17 crew member, and I remember him telling me how amazed he was. He was stationed originally in England, and then the squadron moved to Foggia, Italy, and I remember him telling me about flying over the Swiss Alps and how beautiful, and he was just in awe of the Swiss Alps. And I think they even got down into do a lot of recon photographing, even down through Africa.
So when you heard those stories, did that have a big impact on you as a kid?
Not really as a child, but as time went on, the more I learned, I had appreciation for the things that the folks in World War II actually did, and the number of places that he went. So.
Did you have a favorite World War II movie growing up?
No, not really. The best World War II movie, I think, in my mind now is Saving Private Ryan. So, and as a child, when we lived in France, The battlegrounds of World War I and World War II were my playgrounds as a 12-year-old.
So to kind of circle back to your own experience, where did you go to high school?
I graduated from Pius X High School in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And were you there for all 4 years of high school?
I was there for, we had just gotten back into the United States, and Dad was stationed at Lincoln Air Force Base, and I entered Pius X High School as a sophomore.
Before Vietnam, where did you go to college and what did you study?
Well, I originally enrolled at the University of Nebraska, and after a year, Dad had orders to be stationed in Iowa City, Iowa. He was the local Air Force recruiter in town, so I transferred to the University of Iowa and majored in psychology.
And what years was that?
That would have been 1965, and I graduated in 68.
Okay. Did you hear anything about the Vietnam War during your time in college?
Well, at the University of Iowa was kind of a hotbed of protests. Biggest organization, Students for a Democratic Society, were protesting continually and pretty hot and heavy. And I believe that the first person to burn his draft card was a University of Iowa student.
So you got to see all of that?
Witnessed it every day.
And how did you feel about it as the son of a military career man?
Well, it's being in ROTC and growing up in a military family, I guess it was ingrained into me to be a fairly patriotic individual, and just had to avoid the protests and the activity at the time as much as I could.
So you weren't there for the draft card burning, you just heard about it?
Heard about it the next day. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to move on to the start of your service. Would you describe yourself as volunteering, being commissioned, or drafted?
Well, I was volunteered to go in after ROTC. Graduation day, there were 4 students that were sworn in as commissioned officers by their fathers. 3 of the fellow students, their fathers were full colonels, and my father was a master sergeant at the time. And they were a little bit in awe. We made the newspaper. Commissioned officers can swear people in, and my father became a notary public, so he could do the swearing in service at graduation. And it was a pretty proud day for him and for me.
So that was a special moment, having your dad swear you in?
Yes, exceptional. Yeah.
Did you expect to go to Vietnam when you volunteered?
I didn't have any expectations where I was going to go. The first stop was at Chanute Air Force Base in Rantoul, Illinois. I went to tech school for being an aircraft maintenance officer course that they had there. It was pretty extensive on different systems, hydraulics, electronics, pneumatics, all aircraft systems. But didn't have any expectations after that where I would go.
So you didn't know what you were going to do?
Had no idea where the Air Force was going to send me.
What, if anything, did you know about the country of Vietnam before you volunteered?
Just my only exposure to Vietnam was what was on the 6 o'clock news every night, and after the aircraft maintenance officer school, my dad had orders to go to Vietnam, and at that time, like I say, I feel I'm a patriotic person and want to serve the country, and with my dad being in Vietnam, that just encouraged me to make a volunteer statement before graduation from aircraft maintenance school, and the Air Force honored my wishes. So,
Was that your dad's first time going to Vietnam?
that was yes, that's correct.
And how did your family react to that?
Well, it was a tough time on my mother, having her husband and son in Vietnam, and my sister Kathy. She was married, so she was living in Little Rock, Arkansas at the time. So she was all alone, and it was a tough time for my mother.
How would you describe your ROTC training?
ROTC training was just basically a military regiment. It really didn't, military regiment in history, it really didn't teach you any technical skills. And that's...
Would you describe the training as difficult or easy?
I'd have to say that the aircraft maintenance officer course was pretty technical, and you had to do a lot of studying and comprehend the systems, but it didn't teach you a specific aircraft. It just taught you systems.
And was there a physical component to that too?
There was no physical components to it. It was 6 hours of class work every day, and then study.
Okay. I'd like to move on to your time in Vietnam. Did anything stick out to you about your flight to Vietnam?
Yeah, it was a pretty long flight. I had to report to March Air Force Base in California, where they took us out to the firing range and put an M16 in our hands and try to get us familiar with the weapon before we go to Vietnam. And then the flight going over, we stopped at Hawaii to gas up, and then straight to Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Saigon. It was about an 18-hour journey. And when we were getting close to Vietnamese soil, looking out the airplane window, it was just massive jungles. And the flight going into Tan Son Nhut, I was looking out the window and looking at all the aircraft on the ground, sandbag bunkers everywhere, military equipment, and I'm thinking, what in the hell did I get myself into? So it was a shock and fear.
Could you describe your first 24 to 48 hours in country?
They set me up for housing, and they put me in for the first week or so. They put me into a barracks with the F-4 fighter pilots, and really didn't know what to expect. In that first night, the sirens went off, and the gentleman that I was rooming with, he says, get down, and we pulled the mattresses over ourselves in case, for a little protection in case the barracks was hit by rockets. So that was a fearsome moment. And like I said, I didn't know what to expect. Going over, I feel like I was really ill prepared to know what to expect.
You mentioned the firearms shooting range in California. Was that your first time handling weapons with the military?
No, I have been to the firing range 2 or 3 other times at different bases.
Okay, so just a little bit of firearms experience before
Yeah.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
What did you expect when you arrived in Vietnam based on TV or stories you'd heard?
I really didn't know what to expect. Like I say, the tech schools, there just wasn't any preparation or know what kind of an aircraft you're going to work on, what environment you're going to be. There's a number of bases that you could be sent to, and you don't know what the activity is around each and every one of them. So.
What most surprised you or was different from what you expected?
Well, I just really didn't know what to expect, and the thing is that you learn some of the things to do to protect yourself in case of eventual rocket attacks or invasion of the base. So, but when I first got to go to work on the flight line, after a couple of weeks there was they didn't issue us guns, because this was '69. In 1968, you had the Tet Offensive, and everybody had a weapon at that time, and I think there was a lot of casualties from friendly fire during the Tet Offensive. So they deemed that they would not arm the folks that are on the flight line and on the base, depending on their job and career fields. But the first sergeant came to me and explained that why we didn't have weapons. He said, "But I'm going to give you something that you're really not supposed to have." He said, "Here's the key to that Connex box. It's a large metal box." He says, "That's where all the guns and ammunition are stored in eventual case that you need to get into it. In case we had another event like Tet in '69. And that responsibility of having that key to start handing out firearms and ammunition for a 22, 23-year-old second lieutenant that just put his feet on Vietnam soil. It felt like a heavy burden for a whole year, and there were a number of times where I almost come close to maybe opening that box, and I prayed and prayed and prayed that I never would have to do it. And I still have that key today.
Really? So you mentioned earlier about your dad, that he went over before you did. How long had he been there when you arrived?
Oh, he was probably there for maybe 2 months. So.
And did he communicate with you about what he was seeing over there?
We through his time and my time there, we were able to communicate through telephone conversations occasionally. But no, he really didn't have much to tell me what to expect. So.
Do you remember having to adjust to the heat or humidity or any smells?
Yeah. The heat is extremely intensive, and the monsoon season is an amazing event to witness. When the rain comes, you can see it coming at you. It's just like a massive wall, coming right at you. And it would get so deep that the water would flood into the trucks, the expediter truck going up and down the flight line. And it would even leave, occasionally you'd find a few fish. And when monsoon season hit, you couldn't tell where the sidewalks or the roads were. And you could make a misstep and you'd be over your head in water in some of the ditches. So that was an amazing event. And as far as smells go, first 2 or 3 times that I was able to go downtown Saigon, there's a lot of street vendors, and the Asian people eat a lot of different things that we don't, and they got a lot of street food out there in the vendors. And walking by them, some of the odors and smells were so putrid that you'd gag. It took me 3 or 4 times to get used to it when I wouldn't have a reaction to it. So.
Would you describe yourself as being in combat, in the rear, or something else?
Say that again.
Would you describe yourself as being in combat, in the rear, or something else?
No, we were in combat. We were in a recon squadron, but I mean, you're working 12, 14 hours a shift, and you're loading not necessarily bombs and bullets. We're in a recon squadron. We're getting filming cameras ready, and we had to work with the operations folks as to what kind of cameras, what kind of photos they want to take, high pans, low pans, forward-looking radars, and different things. But we were prepared for combat. We knew it could happen at any time. You had to be aware of your living on the base. You always had to have an awareness about you, because every now and then there would be somebody that would go to a latrine, flush the toilet, and boom, it was rigged to a grenade. So you had people on base that were rigging booby traps, and you just didn't know what it could be. It could be an empty box sitting on a underneath a seat in a bus somewhere, or a grenade rigged to a device that people use every day. So.
What kind of work did you do in Vietnam?
I worked on the night shift. I was a night shift supervisor for the squadron, and we would repair the RF-4 aircraft and prep them for a flight. We started launching airplanes at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then my shift would be over about 6, 7 o'clock, and aircraft continued to launch through the day, come back. And it was just the same thing day after day after day. Do the maintenance, launch them, load the cameras, or if it was another base, they'd be loading bombs and bullets and flying their missions. And it was on a couple occasions where we had aircraft that had crashed due to perhaps enemy activity or hydraulic failures. And that year we did lose 2 crew members, and that sticks with you pretty hard.
So your primary role was as an airplane mechanic?
Supervisor of the mechanics, making sure, reviewing all the documents and records, making sure that the aircraft were indeed properly maintained and prepped for the next flight, and releasing the aircraft authorizing the release of the aircraft for the crew members to come in.
Did you learn any Vietnamese words or phrases during your tour?
A few, not many. I didn't get downtown that much.
Do you remember any of them?
A few. Yeah. So dinky dow meant crazy. And really can't recall any. It's been a long time since since then.
Yeah. How would you describe the people you served with in terms of economic background, race, or religion?
Well, there in Vietnam, you're working with young crew chiefs. You know, some of them are from Tennessee, some of them are from New York, some of them from Oklahoma. You know, just scattered all over the country, and there was really, no relevance as to race or religious beliefs. They had their jobs to do, and you had your job to do, and you worked together. It was a gigantic ball of teamwork.
Looking back, were they diverse in terms of race?
No, I don't believe so. Yeah.
And what about economic background? Was there a variety of people that you served with?
Repeat that?
In terms of economic background, was there a variety of people that you served with?
There probably was. If there was, I wasn't aware of it. You know, we were all there to do your job and contribute to the mission. Now there was one fellow. We did have a conscientious objector, and he didn't want to do anything that would really contribute to the war effort physically. But I got to give this young man credit. He worked in the office as admin supervisor, and he was a very nice gentleman. He was college educated, and did an amazing job keeping the administrative things going, and nobody had any heartache about his beliefs.
Do you know if he was a conscientious objector because of religion or morals?
I can't address that. I don't know.
Okay. But you said he was treated just fine on base?
Yeah.
Did you work alongside any women, either Vietnamese or American?
Not in Vietnam, and not in my time in Thailand. But the women started to come in about 1971, 72 as crew chiefs. And I was at Aiken Air Force Base at that time. And there was a lot of, I don't know if it's resentments or jokes, but when you had a crew chief coming out to an aircraft to work on his aircraft, he carried his toolbox. Some of the females didn't have the physical strength to hoist their own toolboxes. But I did find that later on the F-4 aircraft has phase inspections. You had 6 phases that you go through every time you get the required number of flight hours. And I found out that during the phase inspections, the female crew chiefs, mechanics, did a better job in the phase inspections than maybe the men or boys did, because the young men, they knew what a screwdriver was, they knew what a hammer is, and they figured that, I know how to air up a strut and everything, and not necessarily follow the guidelines in the tech orders. Where the females, they would be reading the instructions, the technical orders, and do it exactly the way the book says to do it. Not do something because you remembered what to do.
So was that happening during your time in Vietnam, or?
No, this was at Aiken Air Force Base in Florida when I got back from Vietnam.
And what years was that?
That would have been 70, March, April, May of 70.
Okay, so right after you left Vietnam.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you went into Saigon a few times. Did you have any memorable encounters with Vietnamese women in Saigon? Did you have any memorable encounters with Vietnamese women in Saigon?
No comment.
Okay. How did living in Vietnam and meeting Vietnamese people affect you?
It's not just the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese are good people, but it's not just Vietnamese. Asian people are good. And with my travels all through Europe as a young man, and even being behind the Iron Curtain, and I've been to China, all the people in these countries, every country are good people. It's the governments that make the difference. And I've got good friends from all ethnicities.
So would you say living in Vietnam and seeing the normal people just trying to live their lives, did that change your resolve of why you were there in the first place?
At the time, no, it didn't change my resolve. Basically, we're in South Vietnam, and the people there were pretty much had the same resolve we did.
What do you remember about Vietnamese children?
I can't say that I really had any contact with the Vietnamese that had children. I work a night shift, and 12, 14 hours a day, and when you're finished with that, you just want to get back to your bunk. So social contact with Vietnamese really didn't have any.
And I meant to ask this earlier, but you were stationed in Tan Son Nhut for your service, is that correct? In Vietnam, were you stationed in Tan Son Nhut, or were you traveling around South Vietnam?
No, I was stationed at Tan Son Nhut.
Okay. For the duration of your tour?
For the duration of the tour.
Okay. Do you remember any distinct animals during your time in Vietnam?
Animals?
Yes.
Yes. Rats. They were huge. And at night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, between 2 and 3, we'd have to take our vehicles up to the motor pool to gas up. And the route we would take to get there past the Vietnamese administrative offices where they process in and out of young Vietnamese soldiers. And they're lined up on the streets, on the sidewalks. They're sleeping, hundreds and hundreds of them sleeping in the gutters of the street and on the sidewalks. And they're cuddled up for warmth, and there are rats crawling all over them. Every time we go to the motor pool, you witness the same thing. And it just amazed me how they could sleep with these vermin crawling all over them. So.
Did you have any pets while you were in Vietnam?
I did not have any pets, but the squadron had a pet. It was a dog. His name was Buster. And Buster he knew all the bus routes on the base, and he would, if he wanted to go to the flight line, if he was down by the PX, he'd stand by the bus stop. The bus would stop, let Buster on, and then when Buster walked up to the front of the bus. The bus driver would stop and let Buster off wherever he wanted to get off. And he would he'd travel down to get off at the bus stop, and he'd wander down the flight line and mingle around with people. And a lot of times in the evenings, he was up, spent a lot of time with the crew chiefs in their barracks. But Buster had scars all over him from fighting rats. And there were a few other, there were several dogs on base that resembled Buster, but they were a lot younger than he was. So he had some lady friends somewhere.
You were happy to have him because he would attack the rats?
Yeah, it was always a pleasure to see Buster. Yeah, he was a friendly dog.
So I guess sort of building off of your story about the rats, did you experience any culture shock in Vietnam?
No, I don't think I did. Because I've as a young teenager, I've been to so many countries and witnessed their cultures and been around a lot of people and in different churches, and a lot of the Vietnamese, their religions, Buddhist, except it just and there were a lot of Catholics, a lot of Catholicism in Vietnam as well. So.
Had you been to Asia before 1969?
No. But while I was there, and you may ask the questions later about some of the time off that I did have, R&R. So.
Did you personally encounter the Viet Cong?
I would say I probably did, but not without my knowledge. Because they all look alike. You know who's a Viet Cong and who's not. You don't know if it's the barber, the guy that's sweeping the floor, or just don't know.
You mentioned attacks on base earlier.
Yeah, we did have some attacks on the base. Had a lot of rockets coming into the base. Occasionally, if we needed a part, my maintenance superintendent and I would take my truck and we'd go out to the aircraft boneyard. And it's out on the perimeter of the base, dark. And we'd be searching for the part, and there could be a red flare go up, meaning that there's contact with the enemy, and you hear the gunfire. You don't know which way or where it's coming from, and we just get our tails out of the way, back to the truck as quick as we could, and come back another day. So.
Some Vietnam War scholarship has mentioned that as the commercial planes were flying in with new recruits to Vietnam, they would be fired on. Did you experience that at Tan Son Nhut?
No.
So it was mostly quiet except for these ambushes?
Yeah. And you just didn't know when it was going to happen. Now, there was one incident. There at Tan Son Nhut, they had two large water towers. And the Christmas season was coming up. So I don't know, somebody had the bright idea that hang Christmas lights all over the water towers. Well, those lights didn't stay on the water towers very long because that gave the Viet Cong could see those things from miles away and give them something to aim at. And sure enough, we encountered a number of rocket attacks that before those lights came down in a hurry. So.
Do you remember seeing Agent Orange being sprayed?
The answer to that question is no, but I've flown on on a C-47 that was rigged to spray Agent Orange, and I've also flown on a C-130 that was rigged to spray Agent Orange.
But it wasn't currently spraying?
They were not spraying at the time I was on the aircraft.
Did you ever load or oversee the loading of Agent Orange canisters?
No. No, just film on cameras.
Were you concerned at the time, even being in a plane that wasn't actively spraying, about Agent Orange?
At the time, I really didn't know that much about Agent Orange, and so I really wasn't concerned about it. But in later years, I have had numerous heart catheterizations, and I have ischemic heart disease. I've had open heart surgery, and the VA determines it probably was ischemic heart disease result from Agent Orange.
I'm sorry to hear that. What were some of the ways you coped with the war?
Well, it was good to occasionally get downtown Saigon. But it was really just pretty much the same routine day in and day out. It's not like you could hop on an airplane at your choice and go to the beach. So there really wasn't much recreational activities for that year. It was just put your nose to the grindstone. And luckily, all the crew chiefs and folks that worked under my shifts the time I was there, everybody made it home.
Did you do any drinking or smoking?
You say drinking?
Yes.
Yes. I did have a refrigerator in my hutch, and the alcohol, the beer, alcohol was pretty available on the base. You could buy a case of beer for $2. You could buy a bottle of Crown Royal for $4. Those prices are gone.
Almost incentivizing you to drink at $4.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier R&R. Where did you go on R&R?
I went to Sydney, Australia for R&R, and it was nice. While you're in Vietnam, you don't wear civilian clothes, but going on R&R, you were able to put on a pair of slacks, a nice shirt, leave your jungle boots back in Vietnam. And we got on that DC-8 and got on the runway, and he puts the throttle to the engines. And the feeling that I had when I felt those wheels, when the aircraft started to rotate up and you hear the wheels come up, is just an exhilarating feeling to be off the ground, Vietnam. It was, it's just a feeling it's just hard to explain.
So you were excited to leave?
Yeah, felt good. So I spent a week in Australia, and did a little touring. I took the first night, went on harbor cruise, dinner cruise. And they had a band, nice dinner. And they had a lot of folks on the ferry. And the band's playing, and I saw a lady across the boat, and I had a glass of scotch and water, and there were so many people, it's kind of like shoulders to shoulders. And I asked the person next to me if she could hold my drink. And she says, "Why?" I said, "Well, I want to go dance with the lady over there." And she said, "What's wrong with me?" And I looked at her, I said, "Nothing." So we struck up a friendship, and she gave me tours of Sydney. We went. She'd take me to nice restaurants, and took me to the zoo, and it was a good experience. Took me a little bit to the outback, out in the country, and so we corresponded for a little while after I got back to Vietnam.
And what was that like, having to go back after the week?
Well, you feel a little bit refreshed, but you know what you're in for. So.
You mentioned during the pre-interview that your father would sometimes visit you in Vietnam.
Yes, my dad ran the base laundry at the Tuy Hoa Air Base, and he knew all the. Well, it was a small base, and you know everybody. The cooks know you, and you know the cooks, and so when he was coming down to make a visit, he'd bring suitcases full of steaks, chicken, pork chops, dehydrated shrimp. He had access to things I didn't have access to, and he even had mushrooms and mushroom sauce to put on the steaks when the folks in my barracks would barbecue. Had a good time. So it was good. I got up to see Dad 2 times. And there wasn't much to do at Tuy Hoa. You just really couldn't get off the base. It was right on the China Sea. So,
how often did your dad visit you?
He came to Saigon 3 times, so, and it was he was telling me that we would catch a Korean flight into Cam Ranh Bay, and then from Cam Ranh Bay into Tan Son Nhut, and they decided to cancel letting Americans fly on the Korean flights. So Dad was pretty good friends with the fellow that ran the base operations, and Dad was talking to him, and he said, "Don't worry about it." He says, you have a Korean name." And Dad said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's Chelchowski, where it's not laying 3 or 4 syllables of Korean names." So Dad went, and the fellow's reading the manifest, and the guy reads Dad's name, Chelchowski. Dad's in his Air Force fatigues and uniform. He walks up, and the guy looks at him. He says, "You're not Korean." Dad says, "I have a Korean name." The guy said, "Get on."
So he would fly private down to you on a Korean airline?
On a well, no, not a Korean airline, Korean C-130s, military aircraft.
Okay.
Yeah. The Koreans, soldiers, you'd have the air base, and the Korean soldiers would guard and protect the perimeter of the air bases.
What was the most beautiful thing that you saw in Vietnam?
there's nothing that really strikes me at the moment. Now the French had Vietnam for many years, so some of the architecture downtown was pretty interesting, and the food, Vietnamese food with the French mixture. A lot of the restaurants were extremely good. The Vietnamese Officers Club had a very, very nice restaurant that served a mixture of French and Vietnamese food. But yeah.
So you would say the food and the architecture?
Yeah.
Who did you write to or receive letters from while you were in Vietnam?
Well, my mother, of course, she always wrote, and for special occasions she would send me a box full of chocolate chip cookies. And for my birthday, she sent a box, and it had a yellow cake mix. She knew I liked yellow cake with chocolate frosting. So the cake came in a box, and there was a can of chocolate frosting. So I took it down to the flight line that night and opened the box in the expediter truck. And the expediter stopped by every revetment, and I was frosting that cake, and I gave all the crew chiefs, shared my birthday cake with me. So that was pretty good. But letters, now I had a girlfriend my senior year, and went to Vietnam, and never heard from her for 3 months. And she got a letter saying she met somebody else and married another fella. Odds are, if that hadn't happened that way, I probably would have went R&R to Hawaii and maybe got engaged or married there. But there was some friends. Rantoul, Illinois is just outside of Champaign-Urbana, University of Illinois. And we met some graduate students there, and some ladies and men. And when we became good friends with them. And there was this one graduate student that wrote to me a couple times a month the whole time I was there. And she would send me books and other little gifts, things to occupy my time. And I forget what her name was, but that's one of the things that helped keep my spirits up. That she, somebody that you really didn't know cared enough to write to you a couple times a month. And when I got back home, my folks were in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and I bought a car. And she was from St. Louis, and I had her phone number, and stopped in St. Louis and visited her, thanked her for how she kept my spirits up, and it's the last time I talked to her or seen her.
You mentioned earlier talking on the phone with your father. Were you able to communicate back to the States as well?
It seems like maybe on a couple occasions that if the base operators weren't too busy, that they were able to connect me to my mother back home a couple times, and occasionally talk to my dad up in Tuiwa too, and to another friend of mine, Glenn Lee, who was good friend. He was at Phuket flying F-4s.
Do you remember any American TV shows or songs from your time in Vietnam?
No, I can't say as that I do. So it just didn't. I had a radio, but like I say, when you finish your your shift work and everything, you just really didn't. I didn't have much time to listen to the radio. So.
Do you have any memories of USO shows or other recreation on base?
Well, there weren't any during my time period. I don't think there were any shows that USO shows that came into Tan Son Nhut. I was there when President Nixon flew into Saigon, and they had a pretty strict perimeter around Air Force One aircraft, but he was only a few blocks from where I was working.
Did you get to see Nixon?
No, I wasn't able to.
Did you hear anything about his visit?
Not really. I just knew he was there.
But just kind of business as usual?
Yeah.
Some bases, some American bases in Vietnam had swimming pools or bowling or other sort of recreational activities like that. Did you participate in any of that?
They did have a gymnasium. It was an outdoor type of gym. Went up, play basketball occasionally. That's about it.
What was your most expensive or frequent purchase at the PX?
My Zenith Transoceanic radio. It was $199.
And what did you use that for?
I just kept it in my room. When I was there, I'd just it would pick up stations all around the world. So you could get BBC and all kinds of different foreign radio stations come in. So it was just kind of spending time playing with it.
Yeah. Were you tuning into more news channels or music, or what were you listening to?
Well, a lot of it, it would be just a combination of music or news. It's just what you could pick up for the day. So.
Did you order anything from the PX catalog?
No.
Did you buy any Vietnamese souvenirs?
No, but when my dad would come down, we'd go downtown Saigon, hit a lot of the shops and looking around. And there was this one store that had an elephant's leg, and it was about 1.5 feet tall, and it was the waste basket. And Dad and I, every time he'd come down, we'd go see if it was still in the shop. But you could, in Vietnam, China, Hong Kong, I mean, you could buy anything you wanted, whether legal or illegal.
Wow. Well, that's the end of my service questions. Is there another story we haven't talked about from your time in Vietnam that you'd like to share?
I mentioned Glenn Lee. Dad was the Air Force recruiter in Iowa City, Iowa. And I met Glenn through my father. Glenn became like a member of the family. His family was in Hawaii. Glenn was a Chinese, Mongolian descent, and nice fella. He had a key to the house. He could come and go as he pleased. He ate with us. He stayed overnight, and he was like a brother. Dad put him in the Air Force, and Glenn qualified for flight training on F-4s, and Glenn finished flight training, was sent to Vietnam, and got to talk to Glenn on the phone several times. Mom and Dad went to Hawaii, and they met Glenn's parents, and they thanked Mom and Dad and the family for taking Glenn under the family wings and helping him out. Our family loved him. I mean, he was a member of the family. And Glenn's folks treated Mom and Dad quite well in Hawaii. And then later on, Dad was reassigned to Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and they received a letter from Glenn's folks that Glenn had been shot down over Cambodia and was missing in action. And Glenn never came back. His only remembrance of Glenn is on the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. It's his name. There's a heartbreaker.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your post-service life. What relationship in your life was most changed by your service?
Well, my career path from aircraft maintenance officer, after I was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base, I volunteered to go back to Southeast Asia, and they sent me to Thailand. I was at Korat Air Base in Thailand, and I'm going through newspapers and everything at the Air Force Times, and the Air Force needed manufacturing officers. The Air Force Institute of Technology had an education with industry program, so I applied for it, and I was accepted. There was one of 14 students, and I went to study with and work with Hughes Aircraft Company in Culver City, California. And Hughes Aircraft, we had full access to anything and everything that Hughes Aircraft did, whether it's a civilian manufacturing or military manufacturing. And we even got to meet the top supervisors of the company. And from there, I was selected to be the F-15 manufacturing officer at the program office in Dayton, Ohio, when the F-15 was just going into production. So I kind of changed career paths, got into contract administration and quality assurance.
So you'd say the biggest change in your life after Vietnam was career trajectory?
Say that again?
The biggest change in your life post-Vietnam was your career?
Yeah, to expand my career into different fields. And and advance my education. I was able to get a master's degree in management supervision. Air Force considered me a manufacturing engineer, and I've took enough other courses to where I held a professional certification as a contract administrator.
Did your relationship with your parents change at all after you came back?
Well, you know, when I left Vietnam, I went to visit my parents in Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I was looking for a car, and but spending time with a week with my mom and dad was good. But after about the third day, I was just having a conversation with my mother, and she says, "You're not the same person." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't understand what you mean. And she says, "You're just not the same person." And it probably took me several years to understand what she was talking about.
What was she talking about?
Well, I guess I took life a lot more seriously, and I guess she recognized my thought processes, and things were just different.
Did you know any anti-war veterans?
No, just that one fellow that was a conscientious objector, but still did his service for the country.
Were you aware of any active duty military personnel who opposed the war?
I can't say is that I do. I probably worked with some of them after the war is over. You know.
Okay. Who, since the war, have you talked to about Vietnam?
Repeat that, please.
Who, since the war, have you talked to about your time in Vietnam?
Oh, well, I'm a member of the VFW here in Aiken, South Carolina, Post 5877. And we've got a number of members that are Vietnam veterans. And a lot of them have post-traumatic syndrome problems. And I meet with a number of them, and I try to console and comfort some of them. Some of these folks have serious physical and mental issues, and I've even folks from the Middle East war. Young men that I've met with that have joined the members of the post that I've tried to guide and counsel, and was able to help 2 or 3 of them get to the right places to get the physical and mental care that they need, and I still do that today.
Have you been to the wall in D.C.?
I have not. My dad has been there, and I have rubbings of Glenn Lee's name, but I have been to there's a wall that moves around the country, and I've been to that 2 or 3 times.
And did you find Glenn's name on the wall?
I have.
How was that experience?
Just just heartbreaking. Yeah. So.
Would you like to go to the wall in D.C.?
I probably will one day. I'd like to get there. So.
Have you been back to Vietnam?
I have not. That's another trip I'd like to make.
So you would like to go back?
I would.
And what do you expect to see there?
Well, I read about some of the museums about the war that the Vietnamese have, and I'd like to go through some of the museums. I'd like to go back onto Tan Son Nhut. Of course, they may not allow me to venture where I'd like to go. I'd like to see the building where I lived, and outside the building, just on the road, just real close to the barracks, there was a Vietnamese clinic, and they would bring the Vietnamese soldiers in that were wounded, and it was at night. You would hear them screaming and moaning and crying screaming from pain all through the night, and that sticks in my memory very vividly too. I don't think they got the medical care and attention that we provided our soldiers.
So you'd like to go back and see those places again?
Yeah.
Do you think that would be difficult to do?
Well, it'll bring back memories, and maybe where I can cope with some of those things that occasionally pop up and tear me up.
This is my last question. Do you have a favorite book, poem, or movie about Vietnam?
The movie with Robin Williams about Saigon.
Good Morning Vietnam.
Good Morning Vietnam, yeah. So.
Does that movie resonate with you from your experience in Vietnam?
Pardon me?
Does that movie resonate with you from your experience?
Yeah, it did. The only thing about the movie that I thought that was unnatural is where they were filming the country of Vietnam. It was the movie was very sterilized and clean, where the actual countryside and the place that he would be were not. They were filthy.